Okay, there we go. We had already started talking. I'm not even going to record. And this is for a podcast, so you have to introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Eric.
Sorry, we're like 20 minutes into this conversation and like 10 minutes into talking about the story.
Yeah.
I realized like, oh crap, we haven't even hit record. Yeah. This is what happens when I hang out with a friend in a session. Is that
Yeah.
like it's more about just like hanging out. Anyway. All right, introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Eric. I'm a struggling author trying to write a book. And like I said before, I'm a French Canadian with a German name trying to write in English.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have my first book that was written, my first draft. Many chapters in there have a third, fourth, and fifth draft in there.
Mhm.
And I started the second novel of the series,
Okay,
and
so
that's
this is
going
the
good.
same series.
Yeah, it's the same series,
Okay, I didn't get that.
but
Awesome.
yeah, yeah. But this scene
Yeah.
is back in the first book because, like I
Okay.
was saying, I introduced a character which is the villain,
Yeah.
and with one of the podcasts you did recently talking about the vehicles,
Yeah.
I realized that the point of view of this villain needed to be there
Nice.
to be able to get more information on the character.
Yeah, I didn't connect that this was the same Robert because I've
Yeah,
read so many of those scenes. I
yeah,
didn't connect this to the same Robert. And yeah, I agree. It's really gonna depth the book. If
yeah,
because right now he's just kind of a faceless big bad.
yeah,
He kind
exactly.
of shows up as like, oh, there's the stereotypical big bad. But yeah, this gives a
Yeah,
great perspective on him.
yeah. So I want people in this first scene with him to know that he's not a nice person. He's not,
Yeah.
he's mean with everybody. He curses. He's not the type of person you want to have as a friend, and he
No.
has no friends.
Yeah.
But then when you see the interaction with his family, with his father, his brother, you hear what happened to his mother. Uh, you see the guy has a reason to be like that.
Yeah.
There's some history there that made him uh, a bad person.
Yeah.
And further on in the book, we're going to see that right now he's not nice, but
Yeah.
he's not the big bad yet.
Are you gonna make him into? Is he just a supporting vehicle where he has like a couple scenes, or is he gonna have a lead vehicle role where he's got like a
No,
full
not
growth
not,
arc?
not a lead. He's a supporting
Supporting
vehicle.
vehicle. Okay, so maybe
Yeah,
like I could you've like maybe three more scenes in him, two more scenes in
yeah,
him. What are you thinking? Okay,
yeah. I'm thinking two or three more scenes.
okay. Um, do you want to talk about his voice first? Or do you want to talk about the scene first? Which direction do you want to go?
We could talk about the voice
Okay, let
because
me bring
it
it up.
defines. Yeah, it defines what the scene will be.
It does, yeah. And I
Yeah,
think I love the scene. I love it. I love the scene. Um, it's good. It's some of your better writing. I do worry a little about the voice, so let's talk about that.
okay, perfect.
My fear around the voice is that you're not going to have anywhere to go to modulate to. So you've got down here just to like walk through it together. Character backstory: he's a
Yeah,
spoiled white boy, rich and powerful father, second child, mean older brother. He had a loving mother, but she's dead, murdered by the father in
yep,
front of him. Powerful friends make it look like an accident. He's sent to a boarding school. He drops out of college and he's an addict. So that's kind of his backstory.
yeah,
Personality: loud, entitled, wants to be seen and heard, wants to be respected by all, has no respect for anyone and anything. I think that's great. And so I like what you're doing here. Loud, large gestures. He cusses a lot, speaks first and last, talks to himself out loud. That's really funny, by the way.
yeah,
Short sentences and gives orders. What I'm worried about is that things like curses a lot and just his general aggressiveness, it's being his baseline, doesn't really give you anywhere to pull back from rage. Does that make sense? The whole scene you
yeah,
gave me, he's enraged. And part of what I'm going to ask you for more of when we look through the scene is I need more inner perspective from him.
yeah.
And that inner perspective can't be rage.
No,
So we
Right
got to
now,
pull him
he's like
back a little bit.
a like in this scene, he's enraged, but he's like a scared little boy
Yeah,
inside.
yeah. And so I think you have here kind of when you think about his voice, because he's not a lead vehicle, so you're not going to have like a whole ton of depth to him or anything.
No,
You know, he can be kind of angry or quiet in all of the scenes you give him, but that inner voice needs to maintain itself. And so I would almost think of this as kind of his first modulation,
okay,
as in like this is kind of the mask he wears.
yep,
And then underneath, I think talks to himself out loud is great underneath. I think short sentences and gives orders, but I'd almost add in here. Let me see if I can write on this thing. Can I write on this thing? I don't know. I've never tried to write on a picture like this.
yeah, it's a JPEG, so I'm not sure.
I don't know. Oh, it's doing something. It's doing something. It's doing something. Is it going to let me write? I can crop, I can filter, I can retouch. I don't want to do any of that. It's not going to let me write. No, it's going to let me like crop it and adjust. If I adjust it, markup, markup, markup. Oh, wait. Yeah, okay, there we go.
Okay,
So I almost want you to have a dual voice here where this is his exterior. And it's a really strong exterior. The scene is great. But when you get into this interior, how do you picture him on the inside?
nervous, insecure. Um, I want to contrast him with David. Okay,
Yeah,
and
David's your protagonist.
yes, exactly. And after reading a few years ago Sasha Black's book on villains,
Yeah,
you know, he has to have like the same basic issues that my protagonist has.
yeah, he's just dealt with them differently.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So David has been living alone with his mother in hiding for the past 16 years. So now his mother's dead and he's alone. And if something happens to him, nobody will notice that he's gone.
yeah,
So his feeling is that he's not worth anything to the world.
yeah,
Nobody will notice. And Robert McNeil, my bad guy, you know, for him, he's been told by his father that he's worthless. That's what he believes. So that's like the connection that I have between the
yeah,
characters. The psyche is that they both think that they're not worth anything.
yeah, yeah. I love this because the inner voice can complement but feel different than the outer.
Okay.
So we talk about his perspective, like these paragraphs of prose that give perspective. I think you need to keep them aggressive, like his um voices right now, right? I would add in here under like language, under the words and phrases he uses. So like he's going to approach topics aggressively, which he already does, right?
Yeah.
He's very assertive, he's impatient, so he's aggressive with topics. In his words and phrases, I would say um you want him to complain a lot
Mm.
internally.
Yeah.
He's going to complain a lot. Um
A
because
whiner.
he's whining on the inside. It's almost what he's holding back. Like it's on the outside he's raging, on the inside he's self-justifying whining. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does a lot.
Yeah, and then I think the nervousness can come in self-doubt on the inside. Um does that make sense? So on the
Yes, it
inside,
does.
he's not a likable character. You're in your book two, like don't fall in love with him because in book two or book three,
Oh no, he dies in book one.
that's right, he dies at the end.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that's good because we're never going to want to spend more than 3 scenes with this guy.
No.
He's the worst. We don't
Yeah.
want it. Yeah. How do you feel about that inner voice?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
I didn't think of doing that, creating an inner voice that's different, and I like that a lot.
Okay.
It's going to give depth to the character.
Yeah, he needs it because right now he's one note, and it's a good one note, but it's not a fun one note. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
he's playing more like a very intense Hazard character. So if we can bring in that inner perspective in this third person close that you're writing, I think we can give him some depth. He still won't be likable. I was really worried you were going to tell me today that you're going to try to do a whole book in this guy's voice, and I was going to be
Oh
like,
no no no
Eric,
no 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 no
man,
no no.
it's like we got to talk because nobody's going to read this guy for more than a couple. They're going to be like, oh, that was fun for a couple chapters, and now I'm out.
Yeah.
So yeah,
No, I
um,
just want the readers to hate this guy.
okay, yeah,
Hate him, but understand, you know, where
yeah,
he's coming from.
yeah. Sympathy hate.
Yeah.
Like I sympathize with you, and I wish you weren't this way. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, let's go note by note. You're so first off, I lied. Let's go big picture. Movement through the scene is great. Like your movement through, and this is you're always so good about this. You're like, he's here talking to these people, he's here talking to these people, he's here talking to these people, he's here talking to these people. I never lose where he is. It's
Okay.
perfect. Your big cast scenes where you've got more than two people, they've gotten so much better than when I first started working with you. I
Yeah.
remember our first time I was like, hey, I don't even know who's here.
Yeah.
These are so much better than those. So there I want to push you a little bit further with them, but they're so much better. His voice is spot on and super contrasts from his brother, his father, the bodyguard, and the head nurse. You were able in just one scene to get four very distinct voices in. So all I'm telling you all this because before we get into like things I'd want you to fix, all of this is great. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So you should be super proud of this scene. It's a good scene. So what we're doing is just tweaking. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. You have this fantastic opening line. The halls of the hospital were crowded with people walking around in all directions, pushing wheelchairs and gurneys. The ordered chaos, like an anthill, seemed normal to the ants, but dizzying to anyone observing. So to parallel ants, I want to change that to observers.
Okay.
Seem normal to the ants, but dizzying to observers. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Just because we got like like single group, as opposed to anyone observing. Like, let's just get into that adjective. And then you have this phrase: Robert Renio was trying to make his way to his father's room from fighting with his anxiety and rage. You've got this beautiful opening sentence. Let's capitalize on it, right? Robert McNeil was an observer. He was trying to make it to his father's room, fighting his anxiety and rage. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, like, connect him directly to this beautiful metaphor you set up.
Okay.
Yeah. And it'll give a nice like intro to his state of mind. And from the very beginning, you start to tap into that empathy a little bit that you're looking for.
Okay.
Yeah, really strong opening paragraph. You get me right in there. And again, I'm right with him. It's really great. And I've been in this, I feel like when you're describing this like ants versus being a dizzy to observer, I'm like, yeah, I have watched an ant pile and it is chaos. And I have been in a hospital. This works perfectly. Um, yeah. I like this interaction with this old man. It's really funny. Because he's just yelling with the guy on the gurney. It gets a little confusing here because you've got two hises.
Okay.
So holding on to his IV looked at him with concern for his safety as he walked by. This is the his that's the problem.
Okay.
Is it the old man's safety, like he's
Yeah.
worried about his own safety,
Yeah.
or is it he's worried about Robert's going to hurt himself? Because either could be true from this paragraph.
Yeah. But for this man that's not in
Yes.
good shape, he's worried.
Yeah. So I just clean it up a little bit.
Okay.
Like it just needs a little tweaking as a sentence.
Yeah.
Um, but overall, man, really strong opening. Anything else you want to talk about with the opening?
No.
Okay. I almost want him to like kick the man's gurney or something as he walks by. Like, let's just go full.
Full
full
throttle on it.
a-hole, right?
Yeah.
Because he looks at
Yeah.
him, he's like, "What do you want?" He growled at the old timer. Like,
Yeah.
just have him like kick the guy's gurney, like just just
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
full jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Full jerk. That's him.
yeah. Um, so your rage voice here again is really great in this section. So we get to part two of your scene where we're chatting with nurses. So he made his way to the nurse's desk where the head nurse is giving the staff. Great intro. I immediately know in one sentence, I know where you are and I get a picture of everybody that's talking. Succinct, to the point, no superfluous details. Fantastic. Especially for the genre you're writing in. Like, stick it and move. So it's really great. He interrupts, really good head nurse. Again, here I'm just cleaning it up a little bit. You had the head nurse looked at him with daggers in her eyes and forced a fake smile. Perfect introduction to her. I know exactly who she is now. One moment, please, and turned her attention back to the staff. So I'm just gonna give a couple extra words there to clarify. She said as she turned her attention back to the staff.
Yeah.
Just like clean action, but great intro. Here you had, she warned him with authority. I love this sentence. I don't have a problem with it. Calm down, sir, or I'll call security. She warned him with authority. I'm hearing more and more from authors in thriller genre that they're working to get rid of direct tags and they want a
Okay.
more indirect tag when they can. So I love this. She warned him with authority. As you can see, I put it in up here. She said as she. But just to give you like what I'm seeing in there, when possible, they want to do like authority radiated from her voice. So it's not a direct, it's still a dialogue tag, but it's an indirect dialogue tag. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It makes
Yeah.
sense. I like it.
So I just highlighted that to be like, hey, this is something you can play with a little bit more in your writing if
Yeah.
you want to stretch yourself some. I like this. His room number, bitch. I won't ask again. He barked. I think that's great. The he barked gives a lot of definition to it. I wouldn't take that out. Like I think that's really good writing. It's very Neil Gaiman. He uses a lot of those like stylized dialogue tags, which is kind of where the world you're living in. But I
Yeah.
think yeah, anyway, just putting that in, not less a correction and more like, oh, here's an opportunity to kind of talk about that.
Yep.
You know what I mean by indirect?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm just playing with your language here because I think it's really good. He says, great, the golden boy's here. I'm his fucking son. The no one the one no one ever talks about. I want a little more conversational with the nurse. So I just added a couple words like, great, the golden boy's here. Make it a question. Let him
Yeah.
answer his own question. Spectacular. And then answer her. No, I'm the other fucking son. Right? Like, so just giving him a little monologue here, which I thought was,
Okay.
yeah. So because here's that big cast scene that I want to challenge you a little bit on. So we've got him speaking, head nurse, him, head nurse, him, nurse number two, right? Kind of as a
Right.
chorus,
A
speaking as a
chorus. Yeah.
chorus.
Exactly.
This is now she. Him speaking, nurse chorus,
Yep.
one of them snickered. We know exactly who you are. She gave a direct, discreet nod. I don't know who this she is anymore.
Okay.
It could be from this chorus. It could be from this chorus, right? I know intuitively because I've read a lot of your writing that this is the head nurse.
Yeah. It is.
So I would just respecify. We know exactly who you are. The head nurse gave a discreet nod to one of her colleagues who grabbed the phone. I was just surprised to see you here. Heard you were away, right? Like so. Just and I might add something in here about like we know exactly who you are. We've been warned about you, like just to give a little context of like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, they told us you were coming.
Yeah.
So that yeah, but you have everybody included. Like great things about this big cast scene, three or more voices. You've got everybody included. You're using your chorus really well, right? The chorus is fantastic. You're not pulling those nurses out of the chorus. You're just like one of the group over there. And you've got your interactions have a lot of energy to them. They're going back and forth. You're not stopping the middle of the segment. So it's just this last piece that when you come back to her, I want you to specify who she is. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, great, but great opening big cast scene. I really love it. Any thoughts on this?
No, no. I
Okay.
really like the fact that you added like the indirect tag.
Yeah.
That's something that I'm not using, and I like it a lot.
Okay.
It's good.
I'll
Yeah.
I'll look for more places as we talk where you can throw them in.
Okay. Okay.
They do what I will concede. I find that if you use them too much, they burden the reading,
Okay.
right? Like because like let's say you try to take out he barked. You're like, I don't want his new number. I won't ask again. And then you have to have like he slammed his hand on the counter as he spoke. I'm just going to take them all out, right? Like, calm down or I'll call security. Authority rated from her. Do you know who I am? I'm his son. The nurses looked at each other, period. I thought you were the son of his brother. One of them raised an eyebrow. Can you see how it's starting to get heavy
Yes,
with
it does.
words, like with
Yep.
unnecessary words? So there's something quick to just using stylized dialogue tags that keep the energy high. So like use them, but use the indirect tags, but use them sparingly. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Or just use them strategically. Now, another thing I want to push you on is perspective and reflection. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
This is a segment, right? He is ending up and it's a segment because you put a space down here. So he's moving away from his conversation with the nurses, right? Where is he? As you know, measures to replace your father's. I'll find it myself, he said, as he stormed off. Sir, you can't go around the hot. Security is on the way. End of segment, right here.
Yep.
You go right into the next segment. Robert McNeil walked frantically through the corridors. Who the fuck does she think she is? He looked right and he's left. There you are. He saw his father's bodyguard in the last room. Here is where we want that inner voice.
Okay.
In between the segments is where you're going to give us that inner perspective, right? So you have him here saying it out loud. And I just want a little bit more. Who the fuck does she think she is? Everyone always treated him this way. His brother got everyone's best, and he was left with the crap. Well, not today. Today, he was getting what he wanted, and no one would stop him. Right? Like, it's just me throwing something out. Do you
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
how that broadens his perspective a
Yes.
little bit?
Yes.
And it's in a little bit bigger voice, a little bit like different voice than his like rage cussing. It's pulling back some. It's got that. If you wanted to make it more nervous, you could be like, his brother got everyone's best and left him with the crap. You could even add in here, like, his brother was the handsome one, the charming one, the one everyone loved to be around, but only because they didn't know him. If they did, they'd see that he was really a bitch. Well, not today. He was getting what he wanted. All right, like you can blow it out
Yeah.
to bring in that like self-doubting, self-consciousness masked by complaining. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I wasn't seeing it that way. I was seeing it as interior dialogue. And now that you're putting it like in prose like that, it's completely different. I was wondering how I was going to do it in interior dialogue, him talking
Yeah.
to himself.
And
But doing it like that, it's great.
I'd rather do it this way because it slows your pacing a little bit. So you can see like you've got fantastic dialogue, a sentence of transition, dialogue, a sentence of transition, dialogue. The problem is without these paragraphs of prose in between your segments, you're going to wear the reader out.
Okay.
So because they're just going to be running from thing to thing to thing. So we want to give them a moment. What a paragraph like this does in prose is it gives them a second to breathe before we're going into the next. Does that make sense? We
It does.
don't want to interrupt the segment, right? Like you want to keep all of this dialogue together. This is fantastic. Don't break it in the middle. But whenever you come to a topic change or an emotional shift, give me one paragraph of reflection from him. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And you want that reflection to do two things. You want it to comment on what's happening and lead the reader to what's coming next.
Okay.
That's why I'm making it about his brother.
Transition.
He's commenting on the nurse, but we know he's going to see his brother, so we're leading to the brother. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll do it a couple more times in here. Bodyguard's great. This is you lose the bodyguard around here, right? We lose him. When Luke comes in, the bodyguard disappears. It's
Yep.
fine to lose him. We just need to show him leave.
You just need to close the door.
Yeah.
Yep.
He needs to close the or he needs to step aside and step out of the way and like disappear into the shadows, right? Like something that he needs to just like move away. So I'm just warning you that that's where I'm going to take it. I liked this. The there was fine. I was just playing with some words. Like there you are felt a little more like revelatory.
Yeah.
So I was again great one sentence definition with no extra details than what I need. Right? Great physical body language here, giving me this really fascinating. He tucked his shirt back into his pants and combed his hair with his fingers as he arrived in front of the hefty man. Really fascinating. Like it makes me immediately go, why is he cleaning himself up to get in front of his father? Right? You start establishing the relationship between his dad right there. You
Yeah,
do it with
exactly.
one sentence. It doesn't need any more. Right? You nail it. Solid conversation between the bodyguard. It's really great. Again, he's shouting. The door flew open. What's going on here? A man said behind Victor. Now, this moment right here is kind of your end of segment, start of the next segment. Right? The bodyguard took a step sideways to let the man see him coming out of an intruder. This is where I would have the bodyguard actually step aside. Not just step sideways to let the man see, but the bodyguard steps sideways to get out of the way, clearly not wanting anything to do with the coming interaction, right? Like now he's gone. You don't have to worry about him anymore. He's stepped to the side, right? Like get him out of there. But the way it's phrased right now, it sounds like he might come back after they've made eye contact. So just get him, like have him slink away. Here is where I want one of those one sentence descriptions that you're so good at of the brother. Oh, it's you, the man said. Give me one sentence that's going to define, like you did up here with the bodyguard, like you did with the nurse. Give me one sentence that gives me the visual of him, right? Like standing straight in his, tailored suit. His hair perfectly coiffed. It would be nice if you could contrast it to what just happened right here.
Yeah, yeah.
Where he's like running his fingers through his hair. If you could make his brother like the perfect, model opening the door. Yeah. So this is all great. Here is the end of your let him in, Luke. So you have this like build, great energy build all through here. Don't you dare put more than a sentence of prose to describe the brother. Like, oh, it's you, the man said. His suit was tailored. And I'd actually give perspective to it too. I'd be like, um, his suit was so perfectly tailored, it made Robert want to vomit. Right? One sentence describes the brother and gives me Robert's perspective
Yeah.
on him. Right? Like, of course it's me. I should have guessed when trouble's around, you find him. Fuck you, Luke. I'm here to see Dad. Our father is resting. Come back later. You could have told me. That wasn't my decision to make. I had to learn on the news, fucking news. Luke McNeil looked at his brother emotionless. Let him in, Luke, a weak voice said from the inside. So you can feel the segment break here, right?
Yep.
Give me a paragraph. His brother emotionless. This is how it always was between them. Why did Robert have to be born into a family of such monstrous assholes? What did he do to deserve this? Right. So, and just to give it a little more context, you might be like, he asked himself every day what he did to deserve this. Right? That's all I need. I just need a little prose of transition.
Okay.
How does that feel?
Feels good. Yep.
Can you feel how it's giving perspective
Yes.
on his relationship with the brother and transitioning a little bit into like, we're about to hear from the dad, and the dad's
Yep.
all part of this dysfunction. Yeah. Without revealing anything. The trick is like the trick of a good perspective prose like this is to give it and not reveal what's coming next. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You want to hint to it, but not reveal it. Yeah. In his voice. And I don't know. I'm a little part of me doesn't like this because it's not quite nervous enough, but I don't know that he's not radiating nervousness yet. Does that make sense? You might
Yeah.
wait to
He's
yeah.
insecure.
He's insecure. It definitely, I
Yeah.
feel like it radiates insecurity, but you may wait for hold the nervousness until he gets in front of his father. And then,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, okay. How do you feel about that interaction?
I like it.
Okay. We had to get the
Yep.
body, just to recap, we got to get the bodyguard out of there.
Yep.
Dialogue is perfect. One sentence to describe the brother, just to give me visual context. And then let me slow down in between the segments before we pick up speed again. Okay, next mini segment is right here. Let him in, Luke, a weak voice said from the other room. I'm just specifying that he's talking to Luke because the first time I read it, I was like, wait, is that Luke talking? And so like just specifying. You heard him. I don't know that you need it though. That was just more for me. You heard him get out of the way, Robert said as he tried to push Luke aside. Don't even try it, little brother, Luke said, poking two fingers in his brother's chest. I'll kick your ass like I always do. Boys enough, the voice said in the room. Give me a few sentences here about how Robert feels about that. How does Robert feel about Luke physically threatening him?
Yeah. He's nervous because he knows that Luke's stronger than him,
Yeah.
but he wishes that he'd be able to beat his brother up.
Yeah. So maybe something like, you know, um his heart skipped a beat at the memory. That's skipped a beat is usually a good thing. So like his heart raced at the memory of all the times his brother had hurt him. But maybe here in the hospital doorway, the limited range, he'd finally, have a fair fight. Does that make sense? Like something
Yeah,
that's like maybe, but this wasn't the time or place to get entangled with, whatever. So like just a couple more sentences here to slow us down a little bit. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put in the this wasn't the time and place because I don't think he cares.
Yeah. Yeah. You
If
may just
he,
leave it there, have the dad
yeah,
break it up.
if he thought he could beat his brother, I think he would take the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. He's already
Yeah.
screamed at the nurses and
Oh yeah, yeah,
threatened the bodyguard. Yeah. So, and I don't actually really like the like maybe here in the hospital doorway. I don't really like that feels too strategic for him. But you just need some kind of
yeah.
sentence here. Yeah.
That's good. I'll work on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So boys enough, the voice said from the room. Luke turned around and stepped back into the room with Robert in his wake. He made his way to the other side of the bed while his younger brother moved closer to their father. The man was frail, deep-breathed with difficulty in an oxygen mask. You've described the scene for me. You've moved everybody wonderfully. I know where everybody is. How does he feel about the sight of his dad in this way?
Um, I think he feels mostly frustrated that nobody ever told them that his father was sick. He had to learn on
Yeah.
the news that his father was hospitalized
Yeah.
because he's the mayor of the city.
Yeah.
So
How could they think so little of Robert? Or I'd actually put it in his head. I'd be like, Robert ground his teeth at the sight of the old man. How could they think so little of him? To let his father progress this far toward death without telling him. Right. Like just a moment of perspective here that tells us how Robert feels about what he's seeing. And again, that's just off the top of my head. I'm not a huge
yeah,
fan of it, but just to give you, I'm writing it more, Eric, because I want to give you the physical feel of what it looks like on the page.
yep,
So that when you look at a page later, you can be like, okay, if I'm scrolling down, I see that in between the moments of dialogue, I'm missing these connective perspectives. Does that make sense?
yeah,
Yeah. This is great. We took care of this already, the bodyguard up above. You do lose Luke here in this conversation between he and the father. You pick him back up here. I'm
yeah,
actually okay with it. After I picked him back up here, I was like, oh, he's there. So I think it's fine. This is a heavy statement, right? The old man removed his mask. You're a drug addict. You're drunk and a drug addict. Yeah, and why is that? Because you're weak. He's got to have an inner response to that, right? Like his father, who he has this really weird, complicated relationship with. Because you'd think he'd just be like, good, I hope that old bastard dies. But he's not. He's here, like, demanding the right to know that this old man is dying. So, how does he feel about it when his father looks at him and calls him weak? You've got to give me a sentence here to give me his perspective. Does that make sense?
yeah. It does.
Yeah. Like, just because it's such a powerful moment of dialogue, part of giving me a sentence or two here makes the reader live with this mess you've made. So
Okay.
you as the writer have driven this to the father looking at Robert saying, it's because you're weak. And then make me sit in that. That's where we're really going to get the empathy with Robert, is where we sit in Robert's moment of processing the fact that his father just looked at him and called him weak. Right. And, you know, I don't know. You could pull the nervousness and self doubt in here, while still couching it in that like complaining bitterness. You know, they never see me for who I actually am. They've never actually cared to look. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would like him to feel like when he was a child
Yeah.
again.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. Those 4 words took Robert back to, suddenly he was 10 again,
Yeah,
looking up at his father, desperate for approval, wanting nothing more. And then this line, if you can give me that emotional empathy, his next line, you always treated me like shit and fucking Luke like the golden child. That context will give this line so much more power.
okay.
Does that make sense? If you
Yeah,
can connect me, if you turn him into a 10-year-old boy here, then when he says this, we hear it like a 10-year-old boy would say it. And that's
yeah,
what you want. You want
yes,
us, yeah. Yeah. Um, this was all great. But here's another one I want, because it's another like, you're slowing down. You can feel yourself slowing down. It's the first body language you've given to Robert. So give me some prose and make me sit there. Right? You've got the best bone. You've got the bone seeker mark, Luke said, but if you had gone through the rest of the ceremony, you'd have gotten the ancient wisdom. He wanted me being drugged out of blood out of a fucking skull. Your brother did. So did I, the old man said. You know how I feel about blood, Robert said, looking down at his feet. Sit in that emotion.
okay,
Tell me how he feels, right? Tell me what's happening inside of him at this moment. And give me it from that inner voice. Not the like, I hate these fucking guys and all the fucking things they say
yeah,
to me, all the, give it to me. Make him that 10-year-old kid standing here in
yes,
front of his, yeah. Um, Here's another one. Shit happens, Luke answered. Shit happens. She's your mother too, you heartless ghoul. It was an accident, Luke said calmly. Accident, my ass. His father, he turned his gaze to his father and took a step closer. Oh, big emotional reflection here. What's going on inside this guy? Right? Like, is he gonna rip his father to pieces at this point? Is he gonna like, you know, attack both of them? Like, what's happening? Give me the big like 2 to 3 sentence internal response that he's having. Um, how is the 10-year-old transforming in this scene? That inner 10-year-old, what's happening to him right now? Does that make sense?
yeah,
Yeah. And you've done such a great job. I'm not adding content. You've done such a great job of building the emotions. I just want you to live with them for a minute so that we can like feel the moment of. There is a weird thing in writing where like literally the more words you put on the page, the more we have to sit in that moment because it takes us longer to read.
yeah,
It's one of those things like, oh yeah, duh. But then you're like, that's really funny. That like, oh, it's just about like, I just need a little bit more words. And then, so make me sit here with him. Um, yeah. This was all great. Like your dialogue just sings. It's really good. But here's another moment where you're in between. There's a knock at the door, Mr. Mayor, Victor said through the crack in the door. Hospital security is here for Robert. This is another like transition in the conversation. So give me a reflection here, 3 or 4 sentences about his life with his family. So it'd be like, we all make sacrifices. Your mother was a means to the end. I needed an heir and she provided it. What was I, the spare? Nice rhyming, by the way. No, you were an accident, the old man added. That's got to hurt, but I wouldn't reflect on it yet because we're in the segment still. Is that why
okay,
you killed her? I just got tired of her, and her tragic death brought me some sympathy votes. Good deal overall. You're a fucking monster. Yes, and don't you ever forget it. Give me a couple sentences. Right? Where's that inner 10-year-old now?
yeah,
That makes sense?
yeah,
Yeah, and then we hit the end here with the transition out. Um this is another with the transition of like now we're moving to the father just taking over the conversation. This is another Luke will inherit everything. That's another big sentence, but that can't possibly be a surprise to him.
No,
Yeah.
he
So
was expecting it. Yeah.
yeah. So give me a couple sentences of like, this is why he came in the first place. Right. Like Robert came because he knew. He knew this is what was going to happen, and he needed to hear it from the old man's lips.
Yeah.
That if you can give me those two sentences, then what the fuck, Robert shouted, what about me? Has less to do with is he surprised and more to do with I'm having an emotional outburst. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah.
Because that reflection will interpret how we read this. So it's that like giving that depth you're looking for with him. How does that feel?
Yeah. It feels good. I see it.
Yeah. Are you starting to feel it
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
I'm stopping to like, hey, put it in here? Good.
Exactly. You know, and what you're saying in my head, I was reading it that way. I was writing it that way. Uh, but somebody else that reads it doesn't know the necessarily the way I'm feeling when I'm writing it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've read enough of your work that I know your voice and I can feel like this is what he's trying to do. But somebody picks this up. This is their first encounter with you as an author. It's 10 o'clock at night. They're going to fall asleep at 10:45. They have like 30 minutes to read before they start to pass out, before they turn the light out. Yeah, especially since you're writing a genre adjacent book, you want to be with these emotional moments, you want to punch them while they're falling asleep so they don't miss it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just sit in it. Like just live there. Yeah, here's another one like fuck you, she was willing. Your word, her word, Luke said, shrugging his shoulder, talking about his mother's death. Boys, stop it. The accusation went away. That's all that matters. Oh no, I'm sorry. This is about
No.
Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's about Robert.
yeah.
That
Luke's
was accused. Yeah.
yeah, Luke smiled at his younger brother. Couple sentences about how he wants to wipe that stupid smile of his stupid ugly face, right? And then we can get back into the next segment. Um, this is the way this ends is really fascinating. I was like, oh, I did not see that coming. Um,
Yeah. I had to put some magic in there.
yeah, it's nice. It's a good
And,
ending.
well, actually, it's not the complete ending. I'm sorry, I sent you not the latest draft I
Oh
had.
no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there was a little bit more in there,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
doesn't
well,
matter. Yeah.
I want to in the end here, the father bursts into flames.
Yeah.
And I which I love. I but and you give a great description, right? A low glow emerged from from deep within the Mayor Nigneo's chest. His eyes bulged from his head. This is perfect. And his face was one of pure terror. He tried to scream, but no sound was coming out. Both brothers took a step back, and then it happened. Flames erupted from the old man's open mouth, and within seconds, his whole body was engulfed into a blazing inferno. What the fuck? Robert cried out. Give me a sentence or two here, either before or after his exclamation that
Yeah.
tells me what's going on inside of him.
Yeah. I would put it right after.
Yeah. What the fuck? Robert cried out. Um, you know, he a mix of emotions raged in his chest. He was both, oddly pleased and remorseful, or like oddly pleased and confused.
Yeah, it's more like in shock seeing somebody go into spontaneous combustion like that. He wasn't
Yeah.
expecting that.
And then another one here. Sorry. Then another one here. The horrendous sight of the old man's brother, fresh in pain, was quickly replaced by a gray skeleton that clumbered in his ashes. Maybe this is where you reflect on the father. So maybe you actually cut this and just leave the what the fuck, leave the shock, and then actually reflect on seeing the father die here. But either place, we actually, now that we talk about it, I would ignore this note and I would just put it down here.
Is there?
Yeah, he needs a couple sentences reflecting on the death of his father in front of him. And it needs to be almost like a surprise that he doesn't care. Like, oh, I thought that would hurt more. Does that make sense? Like, yeah. Um, and then I love the ending. I thought it's a solid, the
Actually,
transition to Victor is great.
yeah, but the ending, I added a few lines where
Okay.
he leaves the hospital, he gets
Yeah.
into his car and goes into a rage where
Okay.
he slams his steering wheel, pulls out a bag of pills, and
Yeah.
washes it down with whiskey.
What's he angry about?
He's angry about the fact. Okay, yeah, in this paragraph here, we don't really see it. His brother threatens his life.
Okay.
He tells him, I don't understand why dad never took care of you. He says, well, he did take care of me. He says, no, I will take care of you if I see you again.
Nice. Yeah,
So
that's great.
so so he's being threatened. Then the Victor comes in, the bodyguard,
Okay.
and he tells the bodyguard to take care of that mess. And
Yeah.
now Robert puts his shirt back on because I had forgotten that in this view here.
Gotcha.
And Victor tells him, you better just disappear.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's great. And so him getting in the car and like losing his shit is perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, man. Anything else you want to talk about with the piece?
No,
Okay.
listen, this is amazing.
Yeah, I
You know,
love reading your stuff, man. It's great.
I was
Yeah.
talking about your input.
Oh.
No,
That's
it's
funny.
yeah, no, really, it gives depth to the piece. Uh, it's going to tell the reader really how Robert is feeling
Yeah.
and understanding his psyche more.
Yeah, and
You
it's
know,
gonna make him a
still,
little more sympathetic. You know,
yeah,
when he dies, there'll be a like, yeah, that had to happen, but I'm actually a little sad about it, type thing.
yeah,
Yeah. Like, man, it might have been nice if he had been able to like figure out his crap.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's good.
and about a little bit before halfway in the book, he's going to meet like the grandmaster
Yeah.
of the bone seekers,
Yeah.
and that's when he's going to become the big bad. He's going
Gotcha.
to finish the ceremony that he didn't finish.
Oh, nice. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
does Luke, are you gonna bring Luke back in a future book?
No, Luke actually. No, I have the Bone Seekers, which is a secret society, a brotherhood
Mm-hmm.
that are a little bit like the Bones and Skulls.
Yeah,
They want to gain power, and the way they do that is they have to kill a giant, which
yeah. Okay.
David is.
Yeah.
So by that, they get the energy that's in their bones. So that's why they're Bone Seekers.
Gotcha.
And I had a Bone Seeker that killed his mother, and his
Yeah.
mother, before dying, killed the Bone Seeker.
Okay.
Okay, but it was an anonymous character
Yeah,
that
yeah.
just popped in. Now it's going to be Luke.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
So Luke will be killed by Sylvia, David's
Yeah.
mother,
Yeah.
and now it's up to Robert to hold the family name
Yeah, that's
and
great.
become the big bad.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah,
That's a nice entanglement too
yeah,
between all of them. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that kind of indirect entanglement between Robert's family and David's family is a good. That's a nice play. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, let me turn the recording off. We can talk a little bit more.
Okay, great.